I'd like to call this meeting to order, and it's good to see you all here today. We have some very special witnesses to testify today and to talk about the supplementary estimates. Oh, there's Mr. Garrison. Good. We just started, Mr. Garrison, so I'd like to welcome the Minister of National Defence, and I would ask him to introduce his team, and then you have time for your opening statements. Thank you very much.
Well, Madam Chair, first of all, I want to congratulate you for your recent appointment here as Chair. And also to thank everyone here for their tremendous work that they do as part of this committee. And also I see here that I'll be speaking for 2 hours today. I always enjoy having these conversations. Normally it's 4 hours at Committee of the Whole, so hopefully we can get everything done in 2 hours, okay? So, but no, truly, I have a wonderful team. I'd like to introduce my Deputy Minister of National Defence, Jody Thomas, our Vice Chief of Defence Staff, Lieutenant General Jean-Marc Lanthier, Ms. Shelley Bruce, Chief of CSE, our Chief Financial Officer, Sherry Crosby, Mr. Troy Crosby, ADM Matt, Rob Chambers, Assistant Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and the Environment. And I also want to just take this opportunity, as those of you might have already heard, of the announcement of Vice retiring. I just want to personally take the opportunity in front of all of you to thank Jean-Marc for his tremendous 31 years of service. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
So thank you for, again, giving me this opportunity to present the supplementary estimate. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to present Supplementary Estimates B for the Department of National Defence and the Communications and Security Establishment. Now, our allies and partners and Canadians know that the defense team is always here for you, ready to answer the call at any given moment. Our Canadian Armed Forces assist with record snowfalls in Newfoundland, as well as responded to wildfires all the way into Australia. They help bring Canadians home safely from China and elsewhere, and as they mobilize to establish a safe and comfortable quarantine space at CFB Trenton in face of the COVID-19. And that is just just in the first 2 months of this year. As you know, it's been extremely busy for us. Now, these events all underscore the need for a strong and agile defense team. And it is our job to make sure that the team has the support they need to be effective. Now, that is why my number one priority has always been to look after the women and men of our defense team and Canadian Armed Forces and also their families. Now, 2.5 years into Canada's defense policy, Strong, Secure, and Engage, we are moving forward with our plan to support our people so they can do the challenging jobs that we ask of them. Now, through these estimates, we are requesting approximately $796.9 million to continue implementing SSE. The majority of that funding relates directly to the care of our people. We take our responsibility to take care of our members and their families very seriously. Now, that is why we stood up the Canadian Armed Forces Transition Group to support ill and injured Canadian Armed Forces members and ease transition for our members, our veterans, and their families. We also enhanced tax relief for Canadian Armed Forces members on deployed international operations to recognize them for their hard work and to ease some of the stress for them and their families. Our reservists also form a very critical part of our defense team. They help with flood relief efforts and also fighting fires. And they do all of this while often maintaining a career outside the military, and they too deserve our full support. And that is why we made sure that reservists take home the same day's pay for the same day's work as their regular force colleagues. We also recognize how challenging it can be for the families that serve alongside our members. It is one of the reasons that we are working through Seamless Canada with provinces and territories to make relocation easier. And we are helping to give military spouses dedicated access to jobs with national employers in the private and public sectors through the Military Spouse Employment Network. All the while, we are focused on changing the defense team culture to make sure that the organization is more welcoming, equitable, and reflective of the Canadians that we serve. That is why we apply a gender-based analysis plus lens during the development of our programs and policies to enhance our capabilities to make us more responsive to the needs of our workforce and the people who are also called upon to protect. It is why that we are working hard to recruit more women into our forces. Since 2015, we've doubled the women's enrollment in the reserve force and increased enrollment by 72% in the regular force. Now, women now make up 15.9% of the Canadian Armed Forces membership. And in NATO, where the average of the active duty women across NATO nations is at 11%. Canadian women are taking on also very important leadership roles as well at NATO. There is more work to be done, but we will not waver in our commitment to our success. Now, part of that work also means recognizing that Canadian Armed Forces has not always been a welcoming and safe environment for everyone. Now, these estimates include $148.6 million for defense team members who were victims of sexual assault, harassment, and discrimination based on gender or sexual orientation. We hope that this settlement will help bring the survivors closure and healing. And we continue to work towards a respectful work culture that is free from harassment and discrimination. The department is also working with our government partners to implement the final settlement agreement of the LGBT Purge class action lawsuit. We have evolved our military justice system to better deal with harmful behaviors through Bill C-77, which received royal assent last summer. And we will not stop until all of our members feel valued, cared for, and supported. So, Madam Chair, taking care of our people also means equipping them to do their jobs. SSC provides a roadmap and carves the funding out of our fiscal framework to allow us to do this. And we have already completed or started more than 2/3 of the projects that were outlined in our defense policy. Now, these projects not only ensure that the defense team is ready to meet modern security demands, but also have a significant impact on the Canadian economy. Now, take the joint support ships, for example. Now, to date, under that project, we have awarded contracts to contribute close to $950 million to Canada's GDP, and this maintains close to 740 jobs annually. And we have selected the design of our new Canadian surface combatant that will modernizing our current Halifax-class frigates. And we also launched the second of 6 new Arctic and offshore patrol ships for our Navy. Through these estimates, we are requesting $490.8 million to advance many more capital projects, such as upgrading capabilities on our helicopters, ships, planes, and submarines, procuring new surveillance capabilities through satellite and space-based technologies, and modernizing equipment, facilities, and our infrastructure. So, Madam Chair, our government is committed to reducing our emissions to help reduce the impact of climate change. And is why all of our defense infrastructure projects are done with an eye toward greening defense. Now, we build LEED Silver Standard or equivalent armories in. We built a LEED Silver Standard or equivalent armories in Halifax, St. Hubert, and St. Foy. Investments like these have been helped to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 32% from 2005 levels. Our investments also produce economic benefits for communities across Canada. Investments like the Nanisivik Naval Facility and upgrades to runways in Nunavut and Goose Bay, which increase access to these communities and bring economic opportunity. And just as we partnered with Treaty 1 First Nations to transfer the Campion lands, we are working closely with Indigenous partners as we look to enhance our ability to operate in the North. We collaborated with more than 25 Indigenous partners on the new whole-of-government Arctic and Northern Policy Framework. And we are also advancing research and development and investing in innovation to help solve key challenges that will benefit all, including our Northern and Indigenous communities. And the Canadian Rangers are a direct link to those communities. As Canada's eyes and ears in the North, they are instrumental in both Arctic sovereignty and search and rescue operations. The Canadian Armed Forces will continue to work with the Canadian Rangers to defend Canada's rights and sovereignty. Now, keep the North safe and well defended, and to ensure that the Arctic remains a region of peace and stability. So, Madam Chair, in this ever-evolving security environment, we need every advantage to help us identify, prepare for, and defend against threats to our country. Now, that is why our government is committed to building on the successes of the Communications Security Establishment and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. Through these estimates, we're requesting funding transfers so that CSE will keep pace with advancement in quantum technology and exercise new authorities to conduct cyber operations to support national defense. Yet, even with all the right people, all the right resources, and all the right technology, Canada cannot tackle modern defense challenges alone. We cannot be in an island of stability in an ocean of turmoil, because eventually the negative ripples will reach our shores. That is why we are committed to being a reliable partner and a good global citizen. We continue to collaborate with our closest partner, the United States, on continental defense, and we are modernizing NORAD. We are pleased that the Iraqi government has also reaffirmed its support for NATO's continued presence and its training mission, with Canadian Major General Janine Carrion, who proudly leads this mission. And through these estimates, we're requesting $132.5 million to continue supporting NATO assurance and deterrence measures. Now, Canada leads the battle group in Latvia, as you know, and supports NATO air policing in Romania. We also contribute to the standing NATO maritime groups and NATO's high readiness force, and we rejoined the NATO airborne early warning and control force known as AWACS. We also play a very important role with the United Nations. And last summer, we completed the Air Task Force deployment to the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, and we continue to maintain staff officers in support of that mission. We also began providing a cross-mission tactical airlift support to 2 other UN missions as part of Operation Presence in Uganda. The funding that we are requesting today will also allow us to keep our people at the center of everything that we do. Every day, they represent Canada with professionalism, leadership, and excellence. And for that, we owe them the right tools to get the job done, as well as our unwavering support and our most profound gratitude. Madam Chair, the defense team is here to answer the questions that you and the committee members may have, and we are ready to answer these questions. If we happen to not have all the facts at hand, we will make sure that we'll provide it to you at the earliest convenience. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Brazan, you're up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank our witnesses for appearing. Minister, it's always good to have you here, and for 2 hours, it's going to be a good time for us to have a conversation. General Lanthier, congratulations on your announcement of retiring, and of course, we wish you all the best, and thank you for your incredible service to this country. That makes 6 Vice Chiefs of Defense Staff that we have gone through, Minister. What's going on here that we've had such a high turnover of Vice Chiefs of Defense Staff? Is it political leadership? Is it military leadership? What's the issue? It's not providing great morale boosting to our troops.
Well, first of all, the development of our officers is absolutely exceptional. As when you reach levels of this position, the training that you get to being in this job is quite intensive. And as current vice and the previous vice who have held this position are absolutely up to the capabilities of doing that job, but they're also supported by a tremendous team. And as you know, the Canadian Armed Forces takes an entire team to be able to do the work that they do. So one thing I can assure you, when it comes to the work that the entire staff of the Vice Chief that they do, are tremendously capable and properly resourced to be able to carry on that work.
I have to say I am concerned that we have incredible flag officers within the Canadian Armed Forces, and the general staff is bar none among the best in the world. But it doesn't send a strong signal that we continue to see Vice Chiefs of Defense Staff coming and going. What's supposed to be 2-3-year appointments are turning over every few months. That does not send a positive signal to the public.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here. This is supposed to be testimony about the supplementary estimates, and if you can relate it to the supplementary estimates, we can let it stand. And I understand that the minister wishes, and he will wish to answer some of those questions, but let's try and relate it back to the supplementary estimates.
Madam Chair, I'll just say this, that it was part of the testimony that the minister brought forward. It's talking about the Vice Chief of Defence staff, and I thought I'd drill down based upon his comments earlier on. So it is in order, in my opinion. But I'll move on. In the supplementary estimates, you are talking about moving money around within CSE and dealing with cybersecurity. It's my understanding that we just had a White House official here that was one of the leads talking about the dangers of Huawei being allowed access to our 5G network. I know that officials at National Defence and Canadian Armed Forces have been quite strongly opposed to having Huawei involved in any way, shape, or form. However, CSE has said that they are able to manage the situation. Minister responsible for all segments of national defense, which includes CSE, how are we going to make a decision on whether or not Huawei be banned?
Thank you for the opportunity to actually discuss this. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of talk about the systems that we have in place. And I've had many discussions with my U.S. counterparts over the years on this. And since I became Minister of National Defense back in late 2015, realized the tremendous the work that has already gone on. This is how I've described it. When it comes to the one thing I can assure you, that the current system that we have now with the 4G technology is best in the Five Eyes. And as I told my U.S. colleagues and other counterparts around the world, is that moving forward, the work that we will do, we want to make sure we get this right. So the decision that we make will have a system that is either just as good or if not better. Now, our system right now that we have, we can be extremely proud of. So, it's nice to have some of the officials from the U.S. to come. It allows us to actually educate them on the tremendous work that CSE actually is doing. And the system that we have now puts a lot of confidence into not only for what we do in government, but also to Canadians themselves. Because 5G is an opportunity, but we need to make sure that all Canadian interests are protected, and that's how we'll be making that decision.
Now, of course, concerned about how, if we move ahead in any way on Huawei, how's that going to affect the 2i relationship with the United States when they're completely saying no Huawei allowed in any way, shape, or form. Just to move on, when we look at these estimates, and also the main estimates have already been tabled, and they're $1 billion short compared to what was in SSC that was released in 2017. You're expecting this coming fiscal year to be spending $24 billion, and of course the main estimates are only saying $23 billion, so $1 billion short there. We know that since SSC was announced, it's short by almost $8 billion in investments that were supposed to be made into our Canadian Armed Forces. That's not happening. As I mentioned in the question period earlier this week, $247 million in infrastructure spending since 2015-2016 fiscal year, the first year that you were minister, were underspent in infrastructure. So why aren't those investments being made? I know all these funds lapse. You always say they're there for future years. So show me the money, show the troops the money, and give us some confidence that those investments are actually going to happen.
In fact, actually, we've been demonstrating that year by year. When in the first year, if you look at from the time even beforehand, the money that was returned to the center, no money is now returned to the center. The money that we have right now, the system that we have also put into place when it comes to defense policy, to make sure defense policy is whole, we need to make sure that the money is there. So right now, with all the projects that we have a tremendous the opportunity to allow us to be able to, if a project, for example, needs to be moved forward, we have the ability to move it. It's like a bank account, which we can draw upon, and if a project is for some reason is slowed down for whatever reason, we can actually move the money into future years. This gives us the flexibility to making sure that it adjusts with the current situation, because also, with the 20-year plan for a defense policy, we need to be mindful that situations do change. So we needed that flexibility. So as we move the money around to making sure the projects are done, one thing I can assure you is the way we move money around is actually to move projects forward, not to slow anything down. So one of the things that our troops can have the absolute confidence on, for example, the LAV support vehicle project. That was a project we had initially planned to do, I believe, in 2024. But we were able to move that project forward, get it approved last summer. And that's over 300 vehicles, armored support vehicles under the LAV family that our troops can use. So the system is working. We also be mindful that as we move forward, we're creating efficiency into the procurement system, but no money has been given back to the center.
All right, thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Robillard.
Merci, Madame la
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Minister. Thank you to you and your team for being here today and for your remarks. In the supplementary estimates, I see that there are some transfers to the granting councils and other research bodies. Could you give the committee some information as to how the department sees its role in stimulating innovation?
The innovation piece is extremely important. One initiative that we started, once we launched the defense policy with consultation with industry. And those consultations, what they stated was, early on in the process, was that it was easier for them to do business outside of Canada and inside of Canada. They had less predictability of where we were going. So one of the things that we wanted to do was look at giving them an opportunity to look at where the defense challenge is. So we have started a project called Ideas. And what that allows us to do now is throw a defense challenge out. So rather than a company having to figure out what the product is, we actually compete the idea itself. And so then we pick the best idea from there, do early investment into it, and then look at the next development of it. And if it shows greater fruit, then we're able to invest further and carry it on further. So what this also allows is, one, it solves our defense challenges, opens up more to the greater talent pool, but also at the same time, it allows either individual universities, companies to be able to take part and potentially turn their own idea into an actual business. And that these are something that's being connected into the wider innovation agenda that Minister Baines runs. It makes it far more, let's put it this way, encouraging for our defense industry to be saying that we're better partners with them.
Le budget supplémentaire des dépenses.
There's also funding included to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of government operations. As one of the largest departments, testing English interpretation. Is the minister receiving the English interpretation? English interpretation, testing on the English interpretation channel. There is funding included for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the budget when it comes to government operations. As part of one of the largest departments in the government, DND has the responsibility for setting an example. Could you tell us what, in concrete terms, the Department of National Defence is doing to ensure that it's fulfilling this role?
We knew very early on, because in defense we are one of the largest emitters, that we need to be part of the solution. So we committed in greening defense in our defense policy. So for everything from, we started very early on to renovating a lot of our buildings, working with industry to find greater efficiencies. I believe now 80% of our fleet is either going to be hybrid or electric. We're also investing in new technologies that how we can operate with better systems up north. For example, getting away from diesel generators. So these are the impacts that we're having, and we're well our way into not only meeting our targets but actually exceeding them.
Vous êtes récemment de retour de l'OTAN.
You've just come back from NATO. Could you tell us what our allies are saying about Canada's role as part of the organization?
It's been going to NATO these days. It's especially after 4 years of continual investment into multilateralism. Investment at NATO, we look at it in 3 ways: cash, capabilities, and contributions. You need to be able to have the money there to invest in the right capabilities, which we are. But then you also need to contribute as well. So as you very well know, we're leading a battle group in Latvia. We have a persistent presence of with our frigate in the Mediterranean. We do have conducted air policing. We're back in the AWACS program, and a number of other initiatives that we're also working on as well. So what that allows us to do is be a credible partner that we can be relied upon. And what that also translates into, that our voice and influence matters. And this played a very critical role when we're dealing with the mission in Iraq, the one that we actually command right now with General Carry On, and allowed us to look at using our own experience and offer our advice on the way forward. And we were directly involved with a lot of our international partners and with the Secretary General to making sure that the mission was going to move in the right direction. And I'm happy to say that a great leadership team that we have there did tremendous work on that part.
Au début de cette semaine, on nous a dit que
At the start of the week, we were told that the greatest threat in the world was Russia. Can you tell us what funds are being used and made available to support our partners in this regard?
Sorry, it was cut off again through the translation, unfortunately.
Okay. Got it?
No,
No?
half of it got cut off. I'm going to switch.
Somebody, it's got to be
So we're going to put it directly into here.
should work. Oui. Alors,
At the start of the week, we were told that the greatest threat to the world is Russia. Can you tell us how the funds that we have earmarked in the budget will be used to help to support our Ukrainian partners?
First of all, I'll talk about the Russian threat. The Russian threat itself. As you very well know, Russia has been testing us up in the north, and we have been responding every single time. But in the defense policy, very early on, we identified that we needed to making sure that our sovereignty not only was protected, but we had to message that with significant investments. So in the defense policy, now as we're doing NORAD modernization, we're also started to invest very early. So it's called all-domain situational awareness. If you recall from various committee meetings I've talked about, is we need to look at the threats from all the way from space down to underwater. So we're investing in the right research and development. So as we look at the changes and capabilities that we need to make sure that we stay at the cutting edge of technology, working very closely with the U.S. On this to maintain our technological advantage against Russia. And we need to make sure that this continues and does not stop, because stop-and-go mechanism was kind of created problems in the past, and this is what we're working toward. Because we know, as we talk about Ukraine, if we don't send a very strong message, Russia will take actions like what they have done in Ukraine, whether it's illegal annexation of Crimea, the Donbass. But let's not forget, they actually started foreshadowing this very early on, what happened in Georgia. And I remember somebody mentioned that when President Putin actually gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference, we need to be very mindful of what we can't just look at current adversaries, what potential adversaries. We need to see the early signs and look at preventing it from the first place. And so these investments are also about sending a very strong message to turn it into capabilities so that we can actually deter any type of aggression.
All right. Thank you very much. Monsieur Boudria.
Mr. Boudria. Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister. General, officials from the department, we all know that at D&D you have the civilian part and the more military part of the department. And under the estimates, there is some 487.3 million for national defense when it comes to capital expenditures. Can you shed some light on what proportion of that would go to the civilian side of the department and what proportion would go to the other side? To give me a ballpark figure so that I have an understanding as to where the money is going.
What we've done in defense, and if Robbie, if you want to talk about that afterwards in terms of some of the infrastructure pieces, we don't look at it as from the civilian side or the military side. One of the things that when we came in, wanted to make sure that we demonstrated a entire team concept with myself, Chief of Defense Staff, and the Deputy Minister. So we look at what we do, what's done in national defense. It's about supporting the members of the Canadian Armed Forces. So we have various projects that we have started. For example, in terms of when it comes to certain things like infrastructure, our defense policy prioritized looking after our people. So housing for our people. And Ms. Gallant, for example, the project talked about in Petawa with the Health Services Center, which is now 90% complete. MFRCs, that's another project. So when it comes to looking at things, we're looking at what do our troops need and working outwards. But let's also keeping in mind the operational aspects of what we also need to make sure the command and control headquarters are done. For example, the extension of the runway in Inuvik, which has a direct impact for our response, and NORAD as well, but at the same time provides direct support for the communities. So we have it's been approximately 1.2 billion of investments strictly into infrastructure, but we've been having to manage this money so that we can prioritize into the right areas. But it's also one thing we need to note is maintenance of our infrastructure is absolutely essential. You just can't stop. It needs to be continued. And so what we're trying to do right now is prioritize the work first because the investments weren't there in the past. But now that we get things under control, then the goal is to get it into a regular cycle. But we're not there yet. Rob, can you answer the question in terms of if you have any about which projects?
Essentiellement, nous avons trois éléments.
So we have three aspects, three elements. As you know, the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. There's the civilian side, CSC. So the $487.3 million requested for additional capital investments is what we'll be using. So what proportion of it will go to the civilian side, civilian activities, and what proportion will go to the other side?
So certainly I can speak to the infrastructure portion of that, sir, just taking into account the minister's earlier comment about the defense team, and some of these resources really are integrated and they're of benefit to all of the services. And so to give you a specific example, in Valcartier, the Defense Research and Development Corporation is the leading R&D, defense R&D function in the Government of Canada. There's a large portion, so $16.65 million of that amount is destined for a project for, we call it DRDC. So I wouldn't be able to specify the benefit to the Air Force, the Army, or the Navy, for example, from that. It's very much a defense team investment. There are a few other infrastructure projects here that are a little more targeted, some for Army, some for Air Force, although when they are applied, again, it goes beyond just that service. But I think the overall picture, I would defer to my colleague, the CFO, or the deputy, to give you that bigger picture beyond infrastructure.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So we have a list of the projects that these particular supplementary estimates are for. It is a mix of Army, Navy, Air Force, and SOFCOM, as well as some infrastructure funding. Examples are the naval large trucks, the common pattern armored vehicle, the Canadian Forces electronic warfare support. Some of it is for things like identity management for when we're doing recruiting so that we can capture identity more quickly and put them into the recruiting system more quickly, those kinds of things. So there is no project here in particular for anything other than, on the capital side, military capability between the four services and the recruiting group.
Est-ce que cette liste est...
Is the list public? Is it something we can take a look at?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Garrison.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister and all the staff for being here today. And of course, a big thanks to the Canadian Forces for the important work they do every day for all Canadians. And I, of course, representing one of the larger military ridings in the country, am acutely aware of that. So I was very pleased to see in your opening statement, Mr. Minister, that you said your number one priority has been look after the women and men of our defense team. So I'm going to ask you some questions about that. You mentioned some very welcome initiatives, the settlement for the victims of sexual assault, and also the settlement of class action lawsuit on the LGBT purge class action lawsuit. But The biggest issue in my riding among employees is, of course, D&D civilian employees in the Phoenix pay system. And I've been asking you about this for 4 years, and so I am going to ask you about it again today. Because what I hear very consistently, and I heard over the last week when I was in the riding, is that the problems of the pay system aren't going away, and that they have an effect on morale, they have an effect on recruitment, and they have an effect on retention of skilled people needed to work in the D&D civilian workforce. The most recent report by the Auditor General said there are more cases, not fewer cases, and that these cases involve more money than previously. And the last report I saw from D&D showed that 63% of D&D employees had pay issues. 63% of the 28,000 people, that's about almost 17,000 people. So my first question is, have you seen impacts on the operations of D&D as a result of the failures of the Phoenix pay system?
I'm going to have the DMS just get into details of this, but in terms of, I agree that this is absolutely unacceptable, and I know I give this answer every single time, but it deserves it though, right? Because we do need to acknowledge it, and I'm not trying to hide the fact. And the fixing this problem as a government is a priority for us. But in defense, it's particularly the one to let you know and everybody else in this room to know that how seriously that myself and the senior leadership team is taking it. So we get regular briefings on how things are going, putting resources into the right areas, but more importantly, of actually looking at identifying, even right down to individual issue, if somebody has a concern, that it goes directly to the deputy minister. She can task things to action can be taken. And even if
directly, as a cabinet minister, have you made these concerns known in cabinet, and have you pushed your cabinet colleagues? Because obviously we're not going to fix this system. We keep getting more cases, so something has to be done to solve the problem. So have you been pushing as a cabinet minister to get a solution to the Phoenix pay system?
I think all cabinet ministers have been pushing very hard for this to solve this. No one should be having to deal with these type of issues. But more importantly, we're also looking at how can we move forward with a proper system. So the work is ongoing. The investments are being put into the right areas. People are being hired, and we're being very trying to get as creative as possible with the number one priority, that if there's somebody is dealing with any type of hardship, that it's dealt with very efficiently. And I also just want to say is here, just in case for any new members in the room, that we did make a conscious decision in the past of not to put the military on the Phoenix pay system. And so now when we look at any type of purse management programs, we go through a very rigorous process to making sure that to see how it's working, how it's tested, and bring it in a very slow way to making sure that things are done well, while not losing the other system as well.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe in the interest of time, I want to move to a second issue here. Again, I know it's your priority to make sure we look after women and men in the Canadian Forces. In 2015, Operation Honor was started to try and address the problem of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the Canadian military. And recent evaluations, both through surveys and I guess through counts of the number of complaints, found that the problem has not been successfully attacked by Operation Honor. It shows 7% of women in the reserves face sexual harassment or sexual assault. It shows 4% of those in the regular forces. So if we're going to reach the goal of 26% women in the Canadian Forces by 2026, what are we going to do to improve or replace Operation Honor to make sure we really seriously address these problems?
So first of all is Operation Honor is a name to given to the very important initiative that everybody is taking very seriously. One, in terms of the stats that you're talking about, is something that now the Canadian Armed Forces is asking independently to making sure that we are moving in the right direction. One aspect of this is to get an accurate account of what is actually happening. So a lot of good initiatives have been put into place, but also we want to make it into an encouraging environment for people to come forward, whether it's something that's happened or even in the past, so it can be dealt with. So when it comes to the numbers, I am very mindful of that, but I'm also extremely mindful of the actions that we need to take, and that are we taking those actions and to learn from it.
Members of the Canadian Forces were asked if they thought it was an effective program, and less than half of the members of the forces responded yes, that they thought it was an effective program. That's not a very ringing endorsement from those who were actually serving.
We're going to learn from every opportunity. This cannot be Like if, for example, you push out an initiative, think that it's going to be working. What this is putting in a process in place that you constantly evolve. We have learned a lot. In fact, actually changes have been made. The Sexual Misconduct Response Center that has been done, the Declaration of Victims' Rights that was added into the Code of Service Discipline. I mean, I can go through a list of things, but those, at the end of the day, I can go through a list of things, but for me right now is what results are we showing. So what we're doing here is making sure that we have the independent look at every opportunity to evaluate, are we moving in the right direction? But one thing I can assure you, that we will take every step to making sure that until we actually have a harassment-free environment, we will not stop. Vice, if you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Minister. So two of the big initiatives that we're pursuing, we're just about to release a strategy about the change culture. How do you affect culture? How do you change it? How do you understand it? How do you characterize it? Our ethos and our ethics are profound, are right. There is a drift. How do we bring back that alignment so that we do respect the first principle of our code of ethics, respect the dignity of each person? The second piece of that is being able to measure that, as the minister has alluded to. So we're putting in place a performance management framework that's been developed with extensive consultation with the expert and the external committee that's provided us advice. We're aligning the policy. We're about also to release a DAOD that will align all policy, whether it is about duty report and all those aspects. So I'm confident we're moving in the right direction. It's a problem society has struggled. And we're a representation of society, so we're working really hard. I was talking as late as last week, and the trend is showing now less incidents over the last 12 months. We've now have a database in the systems, is the Operation Honor Tracking Analysis System, which is owned by the chain of command to really track both the cases and the reporting of the cases and understanding that dynamic.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. Monsieur Martel.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming today to answer our questions. Thank you, General Lantier, for your 30 years of service as well. And I wish you all the best in the end of your military career and into retirement. I'd like to go back to the 487.3 million. What's in it for Bagotville?
When I'll talk about Bagotville, it's not just strictly what's in this program, but to understand where the role that Bagotville plays and the investments that currently have been made, but also the wider piece. So there is investments that have gone into Bagotville as part of this. Bagotville is also one of the response bases for NORAD, and the one other aspect that was very important, which I got to see very early in my tenure as Minister of National Defense, is the Air Task Force concept. That was decided to go into Bagotville. So it requires upgrades into the infrastructure, which has already started, but more importantly, also the supplies that also goes there. So in addition to the investments to the actual base itself, Bagotville has becoming far more operationally needed because of some of the organizational space that has been created. And so we call the Air Force Expeditionary Capability program at Bagotville is, for this one, is $1.78 million. But that's just what's coming in there, but the actual total cost of the actual project is $110 million. So you have to look at it into the whole concept of what we're trying to do. But let's also look at, with NORAD modernization, we're also doing a much further study of what needs to go. But Bagotville is a very important base for us.
Le choix du procès.
Now, with respect to the next fighter jet, now you know that we'll need to see some new modifications or changes to the hangars. Are you prepared for that as well?
Absolutely. In fact, as I mentioned, it is a base that we spawned for NORAD. Modernizing the hangars, because the new aircraft that we will get, one of the requirements is it's going to be at a higher classification. So that's going to require newer infrastructure so that those planes can actually be housed. So yes, it's going to come with more infrastructure, but that's how we have planned out this project. So as I can assure you, Bagotville is a very important base for us.
D'après vous, pensez-vous que c'est
And when do you think that work will start? Will it be in the not too distant future? Because normally we'll be getting the first aircraft in 2025. So have you thought about starting that work on the hangars?
Underway. Even when we designed the project and the competition itself, what we wanted to do was making sure that we didn't start looking at infrastructure after the planes were delivered. We wanted to make sure that when the planes are arriving, that the infrastructure projects are in place. So that work is ongoing, and in fact, actually, we have regular discussions on this. So not only the infrastructure is in place, the right people are there, we got to look at the mechanics. So it's even far more complex and much wider than even the infrastructure, and all that is being taken into account. But I also want to, let's not just forget about the future fighters. We also have the Remote Piloted Assistance Project, which is the UAVs. When I visited your neck of the woods there, I also got to see the Drone Center of Excellence and the work that's being done. And as I stated, as we look at the various provinces and across Canada where capabilities are going to go, these are the type of things that I look at. What is the expertise in those areas? And I was very impressed with the Drone Center of Excellence and how some of the work that's being done there can the military work in those regards. So all these things take into account, but we also actually dig deep into what the communities offer as well.
justement, vous parlez des drones.
Well, you've mentioned the drones. Are you able to update us on the drone program in the Canadian Forces? Can you give us an update on that? Where we're at with the drone program?
So the program is well underway. The program was already started. And Troy, you want to just answer exactly where we are with the project there?
Minister, thank you, Madam Chair. The competition started with a qualification process to identify suppliers with the capability to actually be able to deliver what the Canadian Armed Forces needs. We've been in industry engagement with those suppliers now for some time, and we're working towards having portions of a draft request for proposal available to them to consult with in the next year, with an objective of having the complete request for proposal released next year.
So just on that point, just the qualifying period, it's important to mention, is one of the things that we looked at here was to make the project go faster. The qualifying period that Troy is talking about is about looking at, instead of just looking at every company thinking they can apply, is we do a short list of saying, do they really have a possibility of actually competing for the project? That's what Troy is talking about. It actually allows us to then the final list that we're discussions that we're having, it allows us to fine tune and actually speed up the projects there. And it's something the initiative that the team started, which is making procurement a lot more efficient, but actually moving this project forward a lot faster.
All
too.
right, thank you very much. Mr. Bagnall.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister, and everyone at the table that served in the military. Thank you very, very much for your service. Normally I would ask one question after another, but I have two questions, and I don't want you to use all the time on my first question because I want to hear an answer to the second question. So the first one is just about COVID-19. The military's had a great role, and I'm sure very appreciated by some Canadians. Maybe you could just update Canadians on your role in that. And my second question is, you mentioned recent interactions in the Arctic. I think it was yesterday that Canadian-American jets intercepted Russian ones about 50 miles off Alaska. Maybe you could just comment on that.
Thank you. When we were discussing the defense policy, one thing was sure. We wanted to make sure that Canadian Armed Forces will be there for Canadians' times of need. And we can anticipate the different type of disasters that have come up. And if you look at throughout the previous years, in the last 4.5 years, from floods, fires, and dealing with missiles from Iran to other issues around the world. And this one in particular, the Canadian Armed Forces responded superbly to making sure that, one, we were able to, because we can move very quickly on the logistics piece. We had, even on the first flight from Wuhan, we had military personnel actually on, military medical personnel on the aircraft. being able to making sure that when Trenton was selected, we had the right accommodations, the right people that were there, and it can be anywhere between, depending on at the peak of it, we had over 300 personnel in support of this. But more part of this is we also have a significant expertise. So as we look at providing support, we were very mindful that we had to protect the force itself. So we're taking the appropriate measures so that we can maintain our operations overseas while at the same time be able to support Canadians. But then this was a very unique challenge that we had to move very quickly on. And the military worked very closely with all the other departments to respond very quickly. And when it comes to the recent intercept in when the Russian Bears came into the American AIDAs. I just brought, actually one of the pictures was just brought to me, which I wanted to share with the committee, is our F-18s actually intercepting that bear, and you have the F-22 in the background here as well. And this just shows the tremendous, we hear about it, but I get to see some of the actual work that goes on from the early detection to the actual intercepts. But it also goes to show that Russia is continually looking at new methods, and we need to make sure that we put the right investments in. We're doing that now, but we got a lot more work to do, and NORAD modernization is going to help deliver on a lot of those projects.
Could you have some other resources available to Canadians and Canadian businesses with respect to cybersecurity, thanks to the establishment of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity?
Before I hand it over to Shelley, this is, I'll be honest with you, I'd call it a gem for Canadians when it comes to our cybersecurity. It gives me a lot of confidence when I talk to my American colleagues or any counterparts around the world of the system that we've had. The decisions that were made in the past, the investments that we made, has put us in a much better situation than our allies. And this gives me a lot of comfort to look at the things that we're going to be doing moving forward, not only to protect Canadians from a national security perspective, but also to making sure that we're able to help our Canadian businesses, all the way from small businesses down to the individual, to look at how do you keep cyber safe. So a lot of initiatives have been started, and the Cyber Center is doing tremendous work. Shelley, can you elaborate on that, please?
Thank you very much for the question. Madam Chair, the Cyber Center's creation in October 2018 has really brought together a lot of the cybersecurity operational expertise under one roof. So it allows us to have a more consolidated and more unified response to issues when they arise. We've taken a lot of the lessons that we've learned from protecting government systems and turned that into advice and guidance that we can then share more broadly with critical infrastructure owners and operators, as well as those who operate small and medium enterprises. We are running a call center now, and that is allowing us to get a sense of what the issues are that are being encountered on the more private sector space. And we're also building and delivering tools out to to open source tools so that anybody can download and use these to their advantage. We also are working with industry and academia and conducting two-week-long blitzes to build and to solve problems together and to create a more innovative base and something that can help spark some of the startup ideas that can take Canadian industry forward a little bit more. And we also have new legislation that was tabled and passed last summer that gives Canada more tools in our toolkit to respond to some of these incidents, especially those that are originating from offshore.
Thank you very much. Madame Galland.
Madam Speaker, for you to the Minister. Due to federal legislations, upriver reservoirs have been unable to drain fully to the extent to allow for the runoff and precipitation which may come. So inevitably, you're probably going to have to implement Op Lentis. And with Op Lentis, they're working in the cold and the wet, and they're already getting sick. But now we have the WHO declared pandemic. And the hospitals are full to capacity right now. And earlier you said that the hospital in Base Petawa was 92% complete. How long before it's actually done and usable?
So first, I want to be able to explain that it is actually a health service center. It's not a hospital. It's for the Canadian Armed Forces. The hospitals, we don't have hospitals inside the bases. It provides the appropriate services, but then we go. When it comes to the actual work, I did get an update from the team, and it is ongoing. This is sometimes when it comes to various work that needs to be done. Sometimes it could be a contract delay. But one thing, because I personally visited Petawawa a number of occasions, and I did notice the need for infrastructure investments. So not only the Health Services Center looking at accommodations, but the MFRC in particular on Petawawa was very important to me. And so on that, I have directed.
We're on the medical facility,
but I'm just saying
I want to know why it's been delayed for almost 2 years.
The thing is, when the work is ongoing, it's 93% complete, and some of the delays has been due to some contract issues.
Okay, and I understand that that it was contract issues because Defence Construction Canada wrote to me saying that Bondfield Construction is under insolvency protection, and why has that not been ameliorated? Why do you still have the same, or does Defence Construction Canada still have the same insolvent company on the books to finish the job?
Oh, so this is where when a company goes out of business, we need to look at finding new ones, and our team there works very diligently to find new ones, and and that's how they're moving forward. But what the important aspect here is, we're actually investing in health services centers, not just on Petawawa, but also Valcartier, in Comox, across the country, because this is very important. To get back to your original questions regarding Operation Lentis, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we have the right tools, or people are looked after. But when it comes to the COVID-19 aspect, all this will be taken into account to making sure that our troops are able to respond. So we're going all through the evaluations so that our troops have the right equipment, are protected from this virus as well, so that we can actually make the appropriate response.
So Bondfield is under insolvency protection, and the reason behind that is the former CEO, John Aquino, is alleged to have defrauded the company for up to $80 million. The forensic audit could take years and may actually spell the end of the company. So has D&D given any of the funds in the $34 million contract to Bondfield yet?
So PSPC leads on running when it comes to some of the contracting work. But one thing I can assure you, our team is working very closely to making sure that the project will be completed. But let's not forget, when it comes to lack of investments on bases like Petawawa, the investments are being made now. The special operations multiplex that's going in, significant investments into Petawawa, because it provides a very important role for the region.
Right, and has that contract with Bondfield been canceled, or to get a new contractor can come in and finish the job? And again, the $34 million, has any of it been paid to them? And if yes, are there going to be efforts made to recover the money?
So, Rob, do you have an answer?
Yeah.
Details of that?
Yeah. Happy, Madam Chair, to answer the question. We expect the project to be complete in June, so we're very, very close. You're correct in your assessment of the contractor. Unfortunately, that does happen from time to time. So there is a bonding agent in place. Perini Management is overseeing the project. Bondfield is finishing the work, but under the oversight of the bonding agent. It's a standard mechanism that we use in construction projects. So at this stage in the project, we're going to allow that arrangement to continue, because we are, as the minister said, 93%, 92% complete, and so we'll let that run out and finish.
All right, thank you very much.
Our main objective is to making sure that the project gets complete, so that our troops can actually utilize it. And as Rob mentioned, it'll be completed by June. But more importantly, the other important work that's also going on base as well. And the MFRC is a very important one that's going to be starting construction in the fall.
All right, no, we're going to
back to Petawawa for the opening in June.
All right, thank you very much.
I met one of your constituents for a barbecue too, by the way.
Okay, you bunch. Jeez, you're tough. All right, Mr. Baker.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and to your entire team for being here today. And in general, congratulations. Thank you for your service and congratulations on your career and your retirement. Minister, in the supplementary estimates, there's a line reinforcing Canada's support for Ukraine, and I would like to ask you about Canada's training mission in Ukraine, Operation Unifier. This week, I was elected the new chair of the Canada-Ukraine Parliamentary Friendship Group, and I think it's fair to say that to members of the group, to many Canadians, to many of my constituents in Etobicoke Centre, and especially to people who are members of the Ukrainian Canadian community, of great concern is Russia's invasion of Ukraine, its annexation of Crimea, and the resulting impact of 13,000 people killed and close to 2 million people internally displaced in Ukraine. I want to thank you and your team for your steadfast support of Ukraine and her people, and I know you reiterated that support at last month's NATO Defense Ministers Conference. Would you be able to just provide an update on Operation Unifier's impact on Ukraine's ability to defend and reestablish its sovereignty and territorial integrity?
First of all, congratulations on your election to become the chair, and also thank all members who are steadfast support for Ukraine. And it sends a very strong message when you have all-party support for Ukraine at their time of need. Operation Unifier plays a very important role, and I remind all my colleagues at NATO when we go and having, whether it's me hosting a meeting or hosting a breakfast, to be able to elevate that conversation. Well, Operation Unifier is a couple of things that we're doing. It's the work that we're doing is about providing the right need. So it's rather than just us figuring out for ourselves, hey, this is what we're willing to provide, it's about we're assessing the various needs. And very early on, rather than training from one location, we made the decision and gave the direction to be able to spread that training out, to be able to go where it's needed. So rather than having the Ukrainian Armed Forces members come to one location, when they have to deal with trying to get on the front line and doing all the various trainings, we now go to them. And it's the locations fluctuate depending on what's going on. It's usually over 10 at any one time. And we look at any opportunities to be able to expand on that training. And that, but one thing we've also said is that with the new defense cooperation arrangement, plus Ukraine being added to the automatic firearms control list, what that allows us to do is now look at how the procurement system will work. And what we want to do is be able to link the from procurement into the type of training that we can provide, because equipment is absolutely useless until you train somebody to use it well, and you make them far more effective. For example, the sniper rifles that have been purchased through Canada and the training that we're providing, because we literally do have the best military snipers in the world, is providing that capability that has the impact, whether it's providing, and also the medical training, and that resonates in my mind directly. That was something that a team identified. It wasn't part of the initial training, that people coming back from the front line that didn't have the appropriate training, and people were dying. So giving first aid training, but also not just the individual, but teaching about the whole system that's needed from the casualty collection point, what's actually needed into putting onto an ambulance. You need to stabilize a person before they get into the ambulance, otherwise they're going to die on the way. Those are all those things that actually had an impact. But what we also need to also remind and work very hard on is to support the Ukraine on its reforms, because the reforms are going to be absolutely crucial to making sure that Ukraine is going to be eventually successful.
Thank you. I know that I'd like to switch over to Operation Reassurance. I know there's probably a limited amount of time for this, one minute, but in the 1 minute that I have left, could you just speak briefly to the impact of Operation Reassurance, especially in its goal of containing Russia?
So as we talk about Operation Unifier in Ukraine, even though it's not a NATO operation, Operation Reassurance, our contributions of what we're doing in NATO is having a direct impact to Ukraine. And I've always stated this, if you look at from Latvia up in the north, where we have commanding a battle group, and you have Ukraine, we also have troops in the south as well, plus we have our naval task force that we command, in addition to sporadic air policing in Romania. We're literally on the eastern edge of Europe there, and sending a very strong message to Russia of when it comes to their aggression, that it's not going to be tolerated. Yes, they've taken the very bold and dangerous step, but any further actions is not going to be tolerated, and we take every opportunity. I think there's a number of steps that we can also do as parliamentarians, but also as part of this committee, and it's something that I think we can discuss further in support for Ukraine.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. Monsieur Boudouin.
Merci.
Thank you. I'll try to be a good soldier and stick to what's the subject of discussion here today, SUPSB. When I was in service back in the day, there was always a bit of craziness that went on between January and the 31st of March, so towards the end of the fiscal year. And orders came down to either cut or to transfer funds to higher levels. Now, what I'm seeing here is that in the most recent budget, there's some $22 billion for national defense. In my eyes, that's never enough, but I have a question for you, Minister. And we have to admit that if we're looking for $500 million in capital costs, it shows the importance of the various programs because the funding is required. But in the past few years, was the budget sufficient for our ambitions? Because we have operations underway abroad that are doing very well despite limited resources. You talked about a number of pieces of equipment, etc. Do we have the means to live up to our ambitions, Mr. Minister?
To that, I'll talk about March Madness in a second, but something that I wanted to get away from and why it used to happen. So first of all, when it comes to running the military, we have the budget for that. Any operation that a government approves is funded separately, so there's money given directly to the operation. So the operation itself is going to be successful. And that's, we've always made sure of that. And there's always contingencies in place. Plus, with the defense policy, we're prioritizing on the capital projects to making sure that we're supported. For example, the upgrades of all the labs. So every lab has been fully upgraded that the Army commander had asked for. Initially, when I came in, not all of them were allocated, but all of them have been. We're moving on projects now for the support vehicles because you have brand new labs, but as you know, some of the ambulances, command posts, engineer vehicles are getting older. So now we're moving those projects forward.
D'accord, Monsieur le Ministre. Tout ça fait partie des programmes.
Well, I agree that that's all part of the acquisitions program. Those have already been announced. It's part of the procurement program. I'm aware of that. But nonetheless, at the end of the tax year, or the fiscal year rather, there's $500 million here is the budget. And I'm talking about management of operations underway. We're not talking about any surprises here or for victims of sexual assault or anything else or harassment. This is something that wasn't anticipated initially, but for the rest of it, it's predictable. So now there are some circumstances. There are, in fact, the exchange rates of Canadian dollar versus the euros, where we have to purchase certain equipment, etc. That can have an impact. But clearly, if every year we need to ask supplementary budgets for existing programs, then what that leads me to ask is the overall funding adequate? There's also the 2% for NATO. Now, I know that we're doing an extraordinary job. Our men and women in uniform succeed in doing everything with limited means at times, but they'll never say that there's anything missing, that they can fulfill a mission. But ultimately, even our missions abroad, there is independent funding, as you said, but we're always in a situation where we have to rob Peter to pay Paul for a deployment. So,
time for an answer, Mr.
To answer your question, no, we're making the appropriate investments into the right areas. That's what the defense policy was about. What we're trying to do is move the projects as quick enough to making sure we fill those gaps that we had in the past. So those are being done. And those projects that I talked about was about moving quickly. What we don't want to also get into is what we've been passing down through the Deputy Minister and the Chief of Defense Staff is for all members, commands, to be able to spend to their budgets, making it easier. We're looking at where those needs are and have that flexibility. So what we needed to be able to do is we can't be stuck into one place and not being able to move money around. Having that flexibility was very important to us because as needs change, priorities change as well. We've been able to do just that. So that's what you see sometimes changes is not because sometimes out of necessity. It's because it's a prudent decision that needs to be made where support is required. I can go much longer, but the chair would get upset.
You don't want to get the chair upset. Mr. Garrison.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to turn to the question of Canada's submarines. And of course, I have a base where two of them are based and the Repair and Maintenance Center in my riding. So it's something I'm interested in, both the general policy, but also specifically. And I guess I would say we had a pretty good record in 2017 and 18. HMCS Shikoodme did an excellent job enforcing sanctions off Korea. We had HMCS Windsor doing Atlantic operations with NATO. Then we didn't have such a good year last year with 0 days at sea. So I know the expectation, Vice Admiral McDonald said that the subs will be back in the water and things will be much better this year. My question is really about replacement. At that time, Vice Admiral McDonald said we have programs in place to keep the subs operational to the mid-2030s, but the defense policy put forward called for replacements not till 2040s. And so what we're seeing now is a gap that's already emerging. And if we're actually going to get new submarines, and I do believe we should, I believe they're an important part of the Canadian Navy, don't we have to start that process pretty soon, or else that gap is going to get bigger and bigger where we won't really have operational submarines?
No, so I'm glad you raised it because what was said when you talk for Canadians, sometimes don't fully understand the need for submarines, and it's very simple. If you don't have submarines, you don't have sovereignty, right? You need to have submarines to provide that sovereignty, and especially in the three oceans that we have, and with the impact of climate change, things are open. Our subs needed some significant investments, and they will get them. We did have the operations that were conducted, but be mindful, those were significant. I can't remember. We have to go back a very long time when subs were deployed that far. But what you see is also those subs need to get into regular maintenance cycle as well, and that's what you saw there. They will be deployed, but the bigger projects for upgrading of submarines is going to happen. And the decision was made by the Navy to upgrade these because they do provide a very important but unique capability that is needed. And based on what the Navy's needs were to upgrade, that decision was made, and we will be looking at what the future replacement needs will be. But let's not also forget, we also have to take a look at a lot of the technologies that we're working on. And through this time, there's some interesting, very, very good research that's being done to look at not only what the needs are going to be, but what the capability is going to be in the future. But they do play a very important role, and all this is going to be we're going to be looking into it as we have the greater long-term discussions about NORAD modernization.
Is there a team working on this now?
We have a team working on, the Navy does look its entirety. We do have the projects actually on the books for this. And the reason I mention this is because I had to be educated on this personally myself to increase my understanding of this, having very similar questions. And the Navy convinced me of what needed to be done, something that we're managing very directly. But it's not about just launching a project. It's about making sure that you get it right so that at the end of the day, that when you launch your RFP, that the requirements are done appropriately. And a lot more work needs to be done on this still.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Dowdell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I too want to echo the comments. Thank you, Minister, for being here today and your team. It's a fantastic opportunity to have this chat, and all the best in your retirement. I'm kind of jealous. That's got to be a nice feeling right about now going into summertime. I know. Some days I want to retire. Anyway, first of all, I just want to say that it's unfortunate at times that we have to choose between really the equipment that we need and the individuals in our military. But I'm really happy to see in these estimates that you included the $148.6 million to help victims of assault harassment. I think it's important that we need to invest in that. So kudos to that. But what I'd like to speak about, or an idea if you could update me on, I know we've had 15 military personnel actually commit suicide in 2018. And I have some figures from 2010 when you did a survey, which I thought was a study, which I think was fantastic news, but some incredible numbers that female veterans were 81% more likely to commit suicide than non-veterans. And more than 155 active service members have taken their own lives since 2010. And, National Defense and Veterans Affairs Canada unveiled a new suicide prevention strategy in late 2017, which I think is fantastic news. I don't have the new numbers, that's one of the questions, but the strategy included promises to improve the services and support available to our current military members and veterans in the hopes of increasing awareness and hopefully reduce the number of suicides in all the populations. So
you know, I know yourself, you said before, I've asked you the question before, and I agree. I think it's a great comment that you made on January 9th. We must always strive to do better. Every time we lose a member of our Canadian Armed Forces to suicide, it is felt by all of us. One suicide is too many. And I agree, and I'm sure everyone in this room has the same understanding. So I'm just kind of curious, since that time, if there's been checks and balances, I haven't seen a report or heard anything as of yet, how we're doing now, because I know, are we investing the right money? If we want men and women to continue to join us and you know, have a career in the armed forces, we have to make sure we have those supports. So first of all, could you tell me that? And then I have some follow-up questions as well.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. It's very important that we do highlight this absolute tragedy. And I've said it before, and everybody, I think all agree that one is too many. We take this extremely seriously, where the senior leadership, including myself, gets an immediate update if something happens. So that, one, they know that we know that we're happening, and so that we get the updates on what the action is to making sure that the family is also looked after. Plus, at the same time, I have regular updates on looking at what have we learned from the Board of Inquiries. What changes do we need to be made? Do we need to make a decision? Do I need to direct changes or anything? Or the chain of command is already looking at things. And it also goes down to what type of support we're providing for the families as well. So yes, to your answer, and it always has to be an evergreen process moving forward that we're constantly learning. This is one thing that we're looking at from stage one when somebody joins, is to look at building resiliency from day one. How do we train our people? Do we have the right mechanism? Are we building that mental resilience? How do we have the appropriate family support when they're actually in, having a young family? All those things we're looking at. This is why the military family resource centers are very important. The joint strategy with Veterans Affairs on suicide prevention is extremely important. So we are putting all the steps in there, and this is where I am absolutely open to everybody. If you have any new ideas, research, we're happy to take a look at it, because this is something that we should all be concerned about and looking forward to making any changes necessary. I'm very open to ideas.
So can you say, like, the numbers now since 2000, are we seeing a change? Are we going in a positive direction, that there's less? Because there was one the other day on my base. Again, I have one of the largest training bases actually in my riding, and I'm just wondering, it's great to have those resource centers, but I'm just wondering, do we have, are there psychological services located within that? Or I know in my particular case, they have to drive usually down to Toronto, which is an hour drive, and if you're not stressed already, driving Toronto is enough to make you extremely stressed. So I'm just curious if you've looked at options like that, or how we can find out about that information, like see those changes, because I certainly want to do our part, and like you say, maybe you have to think outside of the box, but I think if there's any investment we can make, and we want to invest in our people, this is something that 100% we got to be behind. So I just wanted, do we have psychological services available at each and every base in Canada?
We do have support to be able to. I want to make sure that that is the exact goal. I'm confident that we do have it. I want to make sure that I answer your question definitively, because that's exactly what we want. And it's not just about the bases, because remember, we have a lot of other areas that I need to provide support. So this is actually 19 from last year. Is a number, but
19 suicides last year.
Yeah, so it's about the same. But we're also looking at we also break it down by region as well, because what we want to be able to see is trying to look at any type of patterns that we need to identify. So, for example, in cases where it was, I don't want to get into too many details here for privacy reasons, whether it's rangers or which certain area, what was happening in the area, what was the command structure, right? Was there anything going on? So we're looking at the wider aspect. We're drilling down right into the needs, micro needs as well. I can assure you, in this case here, we'll put any type of resources that's necessary, but we also have to go back and look at a few other things as well. Is with the steps that we're also taking, peer support also plays a very important role. I mean, I still stay in touch with certain people that need the support. Like I attend Soldier On events, which I did just recently, and making sure that those programs also are well supported. And also there's programs that VAC supports. For example, the transition group Veteran Transition Network in Vancouver that was started, that they've expanded. They provide also a lot of support. So it's making sure that we're wide-reaching as possible, but also be able to support at the micro level, but also look at any do we have any regional issues as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Spengeman.
Madam Chair, thank you very much, Minister Sajjan. Welcome back. Congratulations on your continued role as our Minister of National Defence. My thanks to you for your service and that of your colleagues, your senior management colleagues. And very special thanks to Lieutenant General Lanthier from my end as well, and very best wishes on your next steps. Minister, you put it in very compelling terms. I'd like to focus my time on UN peace operations, and you spoke about cash capabilities and contributions. That's a very good way to remember the framework. Vote 1B in the supplementary estimates asks for adjustments of just over $349 million. And I wanted to use that occasion to get you to comment a bit on our peace operations, and particularly Mali and Uganda. And this committee had the chance to visit. You had as well. There's members of the committee here who went to Bamako and to Gao last year and saw the tremendous capabilities of the women and men who served, including very cutting-edge work in terms of bringing plasma into theater. I think we had occasion to speak to a young female officer who explained to us just what that meant in terms of our capacity to save lives. How are things going on the concept of smart pledging, our deployments and missions? What lessons have we learned? And what's your vision for the future of UN peace operations and our contributions to them?
Well, thank you for this. The investments that we're making is for the mission that we just completed in Mali. We do have some support personnel still there. And also the tactical airlift capability that we're providing out of Uganda. The vision that we as a government have put forward is a whole government approach. And what we wanted to do is, rather than us just saying, here's what we're willing to provide and let the UN and then figure out where it's needed, it's always been, whether it's part of a coalition or even NATO, is what are those needs and how can we provide support? That's why the Smart Pledge concept was very important, because it's what the United Nations was asking for. And just as a reminder, Smart Pledge concept, what that is about is all the missions have high-level capabilities that only select nations can provide. And through that, if one nation is providing a high-level capability, it's become a burden onto one nation. So a Smart Pledge is about nations kind of coming together, coming on a one-year rotation, so that mission will always have that capability. So when we stepped up for the first pledge there, we worked with the United Nations and had worked with Romania to bring them online. And now I've had discussions with the two Undersecretary Generals at the UN regarding who are going to be the next nations coming forward. And the goal is to get 4 to 5 nations to sign up so we can get into a rotation. So once we have that confidence that through the UN that we'll have 4 to 5 nations as a part of it, then we as a government can consider to get into a rotation. But in those particular things, I want to mention here is, it goes to show what capability can impact, even though medical evacuation you may seem doesn't have a direct impact for operations. But as you and the committee were briefed on, how we moved blood and how the distance that we could fly, because it wasn't the helicopters range, it was actually the transportation of the blood, and how we had the medical personnel on board, allowed the patrols to be able to, on the ground, go further. So that was a way of actually making the mission far more effective. And that's how we passed on that relationship to that experience on to Romania. And now we're working with the United Nations on some of the other Smart Pledge concept. But as I always stated is, we need to make sure that the mission is right, the impact, the troops that we provide are going to have the right impact, and they will make those decisions accordingly. Because at the end of the day, this is about improving the mission, not just to us about getting a check in the box.
Minister, thank you for that. I wonder if we could use the remaining minute or so to ask you to elaborate a bit more on the whole of government approach, which is incredibly important in peacekeeping operations, including the tail end and wind up of a mission and the governance work that takes place once the political space has been opened up by military missions. What does whole of government mean?
We're glad you mentioned that, because this is a concept that Canada has been actually trying to implement for some time. Other nations have also come on board. What this is about is the military buys the time for the other work that needs to be done. You need to put the right development money, capacity building work into the region as well. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is for the root cause of the conflict to be addressed. In each area, the root cause is going to be different. So we need to be able to put the right enablers, and if we can't do it alone, the military buys you time. the right development work. I give you an example. In Mali, we were through development programs. We were investing through a German project to take basically to take a desert and turn it back into a place where you can actually do agriculture. That is a way of not only providing food to people, but also teaching youngsters on how to actually become and take that on. Because at the end of the day, you need the employment. The significant unemployment rate for the youth is staggering, and also the percentage of youth below 20 is quite staggering as well. So that aspect of providing those jobs is absolutely important while we deal with trying to provide that safe space in the wider region.
Thanks very much.
Mr. Bazan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, on January 27th, you answered an order paper question that we put on the table, order paper question 184, talking about how many projects in National Defense Canadian Armed Forces are currently behind schedule. The response that there are 117 projects that are delayed. Yet your spokesperson from your office said that 90% are delivered within budget and scope. Now, that's an old statistic. That goes back to 2017. Why haven't you updated that statistic? And why are you misleading Canadians by putting out that information?
One, Mr. Bazan, we're absolutely not here to, not misleading Canadians. We're here to, one, move the projects forward as quickly as possible. And any information, I'm happy to be able to provide that. And you know that I've been very open with all members in trying to take into account and improving how we work in defense. I'm happy to be able to get you the updated information on this.
If you could actually update that information.
And what particular projects are you asking about?
Yeah, projects and how, actually as percentages.
Capital projects, infrastructure projects. When it comes to, because also, when it comes to, for example, you talked about delays. Delays also is a very wide aspect of looking, because you got to drill down to each one. In some cases, for example, a project is delayed because we want to make sure that the requirements are met. But the point is, we want to make sure we want to move forward as quickly as possible. But at the end of the day, get the actual project that we.
So if we can provide that information to the committee, I'd appreciate it. I want to move on to your department has now spent $3 billion on buying 25 rusted out old Australian fighter jets. You're upgrading the avionics and warfighting capabilities on 54 CF-18s. $3 billion without one new fighter jet. So how many fighter jets could you have bought for $3 billion?
I'm happy to have the discussion with you again, Mr. Bizan, on this. And I'll say it to you directly before. We wouldn't have had to buy used jets if those jets were replaced a long time ago. Let me finish. Let me answer your question here, okay? The reason these jets are important, we could have easily started the competition and carried on with this. But we have missions to fly. As you know right now, we talked about the importance of sending a message to Russia. Look what's happening in Ukraine. We're back into air policing at NATO. We've just doing more intercepts. Plus, our folks have to train. So as we
put our CF-18s in combat, and they were actually fighting in Iraq and Syria.
And the importance of investing in the current fleet as well. And if they were replaced a long time ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. But having said that, the competition is moving ahead forward.
We're absolutely committed
to purchasing 88 aircraft. And we need to make sure, this is a very complex process, but we need to make sure that it goes well so that we actually get the aircraft
that we need.
If
I could, you talk about 88 planes. You have this so-called capability gap, why we need 88 planes. Then why are you only upgrading 54 of them? 54 of our current CF-18s is all that you're upgrading. Why would so your numbers don't match? So if I only need 54 upgraded to actually go out there and do the job, then why?
As I talked to you about this before, what this is as we're using the aircraft, the new aircraft come in line. So the Air Force is working out the mathematics of taking delivery of the new aircraft and transitioning out. So all that is being worked on while we actually carry out those missions. And I've been seeing some of the work that they've been doing, putting a lot of science behind it. And I'm very impressed with the work that the Air Force is doing and how that transition is going to go.
What's the survivability of our CF-18 fleet that we currently have? When did you actually get it briefed by the RCAF that we needed to upgrade avionics, and why aren't we upgrading the jammers that are on them as well?
In fact, Ashley, when it comes to the briefings, this is one of the main projects I started on from day one, and the upgrades that are occurring. I'll give you an example. So the investments that we're making is not only upgrade the radar systems, but we're also looking at the weapon systems as well. And everything comes with a package. I'll give you an example. You can buy, for example, a new helmet, but it has to come with the right system. That's the stuff that I was dealt with when I came in, and you should know this because you're Parliamentary Secretary of National Defence back then, right? But at the end of the day, I think you and I both agree that we do need to replace these, and we need to do it well. And because we have missions to fly, the projects that we're doing right now, we're putting the appropriate investments into the current fleet so we can continue to fly those missions. But the replacement, the project itself, the competition has to go well because this is a very significant project.
On the competition, we've had another delay by 3 months because one of the bidders didn't do their homework. Is it fair to the other competitors in this that you keep moving the yardsticks, and by delaying it, we're delaying actually making the decision on what new fighter jet we're going to give to our Air Force?
So first of all, is the decisions made for this is done through PSPC, right? In terms of managing the project, it has to be very independent and making sure that the competition is respected. So the decisions are made for the integrity of making sure that this goes into competition. And keep in mind, I'd rather have personally, as a Minister of National Defence, if we're giving an opportunity of 3 months, 3 months out of the how long it's taken to replace our aircraft, to making sure that we get the right aircraft. So these are decisions that are being made. My goal out of this is to get the aircraft as quickly as possible, but it has to be the right one as well.
All right, thank you. Ms. Vanderbilt.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you, Minister, for being here today and being so forthcoming in your answers. I also want to extend the same gratitude to Lieutenant General Lantier for your service and to all of those who serve. And I'd like to also add to their families, because we know that when a member serves, their families serve along with them. And that's actually the nature of the question that I would like to ask. It's around Seamless Canada. You mentioned this in your opening remarks. We know that it is very hard on military families when they are relocated. And what are we doing, and how are we working with provinces to try to ensure that that transition, particularly if it's across provinces, is as easy on families as possible?
You hit on something that's very important, and I say this again. Regardless of what position we hold in society, or any Canadian holds in society, when something is not right at home, how can you concentrate on your work? Then you apply that to the context of the military, and when we ask them to do challenging things, very dangerous work, you want to make sure that they know that the families are looked after. And in full transparency, even though I've served in the reserves, I've done a lot of overseas deployment, when I became Minister of National Defence, I got to see the direct impact a relocation has on regular force families. And the challenges that everything from a driver's license, medical, accreditation for a spouse. And so we didn't have an idea initially. We wanted to solve this. But this is one thing where, because we were very open to ideas on what we needed to do, Seamless Canada was actually a co-developed projects with the provinces to bringing all the represented territories. And so instead of going piecemeal one by one, we come together, have a look at what have we worked on. And through this, some now provinces already have come forward, whether it's saying they want to provide more doctors, trying to deal with the driver's license issues, medical card issues. So it has a significant impact. And we actually brought spouses in to be able to talk about their challenges. And we need to now look at making this even better. And what I was speaking with the representatives from Manitoba, and the goal is, rather than just waiting for one meeting, we need to start looking at putting working groups together so that when we come together, we can talk about the progress that we have made, what are those challenges, and how do we move forward, where do I need to engage and get some changes done. Because ultimately, this does have a significant impact on families. We are working on a few initiatives, but I have a little bit more work to do with my team before we move forward on it. Thanks.
And we also know that for spousal employment, in fact, many spouses also have, there's multiple members of the family serving, but in spouses that are not also military, it can be very challenging. Lawyers who have to go back and learn the bar in another province, there's a number of things that can be difficult in terms of the spouse's career. You mentioned the Military Spouse Employment Network. Can you explain a little bit what that is?
What this is about regardless of what profession you might be in, when you move, you may not be able to get a job in that field. So we have now various networks in the military, especially for the reserves, called the Canadian Forces Liaison Council. So it's leveraging the organizations that we have with businesses to be able to say, you know what, here's a challenge that the regular force members' families have. How can you be more supportive? And so now businesses will look at saying, oh, you're a military spouse of a military member, of getting, I think, they'll take you in. We did the same thing for doctors. My wife actually did this, and they started a network with other doctors to educate them that if you're a military family that's moving, you're going to have to switch doctors. And so make their life a little bit easier, just accept them. And so this is also part of this. And we have a few more initiatives. What we want to do is how can we even further improve this?
And of course, when people retire or end their service, that can be a challenging time as well. What kinds of supports are there for transitions?
The transition is never easy. Those have gone through it, and we see sometimes the real negative impacts as well. And to kind of also answer the other members' questions regarding what support that you provide. When you look at supporting families, it also provides that direct support for the families, because sometimes there are family challenges that can create other mental health challenges to members. So the transition group is something that we created, a command that does just that, looks after our people to transition them out. And the goal of this is when you're going to do transition, it connects directly through Veterans Affairs programs as well. So you be able to everything go from making sure their pension check is done, all their paperwork is done, what programs do you need, and also if there's any retraining that needs to be done, is there a VAC program or the new education benefit program that we have put into place? Okay, how could they take advantage of that? And we're also, by the way, looking at trying to improve that as well.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Boudria.
3 minutes.
Let's go back to the fighter jets, or another topic. Fighter jets, let's go with that. There are delays with respect to the RFPs. They've been changed several times. Now there's a new clause or criteria, the Five Eyes. And that can exclude some NATO partners, for example. They've withdrawn and won't be bidding on future contracts. Is that not a situation that will channel our choice in terms of the next fighter jet? Channel it into a very limited market that could have an impact on operations and taxpayers in terms of the ultimate budget?
One, this is nothing new. One, NATO requirements, Five Eyes requirement, and let's not forget our most important requirement is our own Arctic sovereignty through NORAD, the only binational command in the world that allows us to be able to respond to this. So this is extremely important. So these requirements that are put into place are absolutely essential. So this is not about pointing fingers at any one aircraft or company. This is literally about making sure that our requirements are met. And as you can see here, we do have companies still in the process. But at the end of the day, for me, this is a complicated project, but I have to keep it very simple. The requirements that we have set out are absolutely necessary for us to be able to meet our mission, and the companies have to demonstrate that. And we'll have a fair competition for this. And just if you see what's happening up north, based on the picture that I provided, all those requirements need to be met, not only Five Eyes, but also our NORAD compliance as well.
Pour les mitrailleuses C6.
Now, for the C6, the machine guns, they need to be changed, but 27,000 units, isn't that a pretty high cost then?
They need to be changed, and they have been changed. And the C6s are starting to coming into service. But let's not. So I want to just go back into like a project like this, right? Those are projects that we're able to move on very quickly. anti-armor capability that was taken out because trying to save money. I'll give you, so talking about C6, yes, that's something that was brought in very quickly, and it's happening. But anti-armor, these are like little capabilities we don't talk about. We talk about sometimes big projects. The first time I went into Iraq, I visited our troops. The only anti-armor capability, we had a Carl Gustav at that time, because we, a government who won't point fingers at, we always have to take a little bit of dig at one another. Anti-armor capability was taken out. And I'm sure that it wasn't assessed at that time when the capability was taken, but we were dealing with some serious issues of those type of vehicles. And then we made immediate decisions to making sure that we did emergency buy to get the anti-armor capability in, not only for our special forces, but also bringing this capability back into the Canadian Armed Forces. And now they're going through the various trials to select which one that they want. So whether it's a C6 anti-armor capabilities, bringing mortars back, let's not also forget we're bringing back air defense capability as well. And the reason I say capability, I don't know what the selection is going to be, but air defense capability, so we can actually defend ourselves and not have to rely on our allies to provide air defense for us when we deploy.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Maybe I'll stick with fighter jets briefly. I've got the same sort of 3-minute slot here to deal with. In the competition, we had been suggesting as New Democrats that there should be some premium given in the competition for actually producing the jets in Canada. And the criteria that went out don't seem to have done that. They talk about some transfer of technology. But it would seem to be a good idea if we're going to spend all this money on jets, that we maintain the Canadian aerospace capability would allow us to maintain and upgrade them in the future. And so can you tell me what weight is actually being given to that, both either production here or transfer of technology here, so we can continue to support the jets once we buy them?
Yeah, so first of all, our Canadian defense procurement that we do want to make sure that the Canadian companies Canadians benefit from jobs, and many other projects, including the surface combatant projects, is a good example of that. Or every dollar that's spent on this project is an investment into Canada. When it comes to the fighters, we obviously don't build these. We don't have that capability. So that competition is very important. That capability piece has to be number one, to making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces has that capability. But also, we look at the ITB benefits, the direct benefits to Canada. So there are direct benefits to Canadian companies. But also, I want to be able to also emphasize, we do have great companies that provide the internal capabilities to various procurement projects, not just for us, but also to our allies. And so when we look at for example, a ship, I don't look at the hull or the airframe. We look at what goes inside it. That is probably the most important piece. And we have a lot of Canadian ingenuity that can take advantage of that, and they will.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll rest Monsieur Martin.
At present, I'm concerned by the most recent Auditor General's report, in fact, the one for 2018, where it talked about the shortage of pilots and technicians. Now, we've got some obligations we have to meet, and it seems to me that not much has been done when it comes to recruit technicians and pilots. And then there's the funding that we need for that section, that department. Could you comment on that?
That question is something that we identified very early on, that this was not a problem just for us in the military, but it's also a problem in the industry as well. So as I have many discussions with the Minister of Transport on this. So we adjusted our recruiting targets to start recruiting pilots very early on, even before, even while the defense policy analysis was going on. So, for example, one of the reasons we also need more pilots is because we're buying more aircraft. Originally, the plan was with the previous government to buy 65, but we needed 88 based on our analysis. We have new search and rescue aircraft that are coming. So we have put the right investments in to start recruiting more pilots. We're also putting emphasis on retention as well. We're also looking at how we can use the air reserves a lot more. And this is something that has, I believe, that's been underutilized. And so the Air Force has been looking at new things. The mechanics, same thing. We knew that we're going to be needing far more mechanics, so the recruitment is happening for that. And the final piece to it is we do have to start looking at incentives for some of these critical trades. And there's some work going on to looking at this trades that are under stress and what can we do to support them so that we can either recruit or retain them better.
Moi, je suis inquiet quand même parce que là, on parle de.
Well, I'm concerned because we're talking about pilots, but there are some pilots who can't even get in there 140 hours a year because the aircraft can't fly, because there's a shortage of technicians and mechanics. So it seems like we're going around in circles. Then there will be cost overruns for the Australian aircraft. The delays are getting longer. So now you talked about pilots, but for the technicians, now given the time frames, given the Australian aircraft, they're supposed to be coming in 2025. Why do we have to? Why can't we let the technicians work on the aircraft on the ground and then use those ones for the parts? So these are a lot of the questions we have because the costs are very high, and I'm really concerned about the amounts into whether we're actually going to meet our objectives.
The investments that we're making into these projects includes the investments onto our people as well, to making sure that we have the right number of pilots and technicians to carry out for the aircrafts that we have. That's the plan that the Air Force have been building. That includes also the transition into the new fighter fleet as well. It is quite complex because as we look at not just the mechanics, the pilots, we have to look at how the training goes as well as we fly those missions. So it is fine balance that we're doing, but this is a challenge that we have been given. But when it comes to the investments, we're willing to make those investments so that our Air Force has the capability so they can actually continue to fly that mission. And it includes also flying more as well.
Ça serait intéressant au comité de.
Well, it would be interesting for the committee to know how many pilots we need. We need some figures. How many technicians? How many pilots are combat ready at present? I think it would be interesting if we could have some clearer information in that respect. How many hours they have on average, have put in on average over the past year, because we're always in a bit of a gray area. We don't know where we're at. So could we have a list? Could you give the committee that type of information? How many pilots we need at present? How many technicians do we need? Is that something you could give the committee, a list?
Get the information regarding not only where we're at, but more importantly, where we're going and what we need and how we're going to get there. So we'll get you that information.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Spengeman.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to pick up on the point of the pilot shortage, Minister. To what extent are we investing upstream in the cadet program, particularly the Air Cadet program? Is there an opportunity there to generate even greater interest in the profession of flying and the discipline of flying and the skills related to it, and to focus on the intake that way?
And the reason I'm chuckling on this one is our cadet program is just absolutely amazing. And the reason I even in my own riding, I have an Air Cadet program that started with just a few cadets, and it's just ballooning. And the diversity that you see in there is absolutely amazing. And I actually have asked the question to the leadership and saying, how are the cadets getting this? They're representative of their community. There's interest there. We do have to be mindful on one thing is because the cadet program, it was purposely separated to make sure from the military. But at the same time, I think military is just like any other profession. We need to be able to showcase this. But part of it also is bringing some of the programs back into it. For example, some of the glider training, the summer camps as well. So more that you do of real activity into that leadership program allows them to learn more about what the potential opportunities are there for them in the future.
Minister, thank you for that. And the other synergy that exists, if that's the right label, is that we also have a civilian pilot shortage. So the attraction there is civilian airlines love to hire military pilots because of the standard of training and the flight hours and the quality of flight hours. Is there more that we could do to signal to young pilots, and I'll take you in a moment to the diversity and inclusion question that's added to this, to look not just at a military career, but then at a subsequent civilian career that could lead to management positions in the aviation sector and all kinds of other opportunities as well, including rotary wing flying.
No, I think showcasing that opportunity is very important. But one thing I will stress that civilian aviation can't do is you can't fly the type of missions that are flown in the Air Force. And I was, and everybody thinks about fighters. I've actually gone to the school where they teach our pilots. A lot of them, I don't know what's going to happen when the new Top Gun comes out, but a lot of people want to be helicopter pilots. So I'll be honest with you, when I fly in the Chinook, I'm amazed. It's one of my favorite aircrafts to be in, right? But talking to our Herc pilots, so when I have the opportunity to fly with them in an operational aircraft, I want to talk to them. Why they're doing? What are the issues? And it's to answer your question, saying, you know what? They go, sir, we can't do this anywhere else. We're flying into small landing areas in Africa, and he goes, when you get to do real things, right? That's what keeps us in. So part of it is when we're doing more with our Air Force around the world and utilizing them, and boy, are we ever. That's also a retention a tool as well. And to be honest with you, I get to meet people from all over, and I am seeing even significant improvement in diversity as well. More we reach out, I think that it's an untapped resource that we're getting better at.
Sure, I want to pick up on that very point and take you back to our visit to the Mali mission. I mentioned the young female officer who was in conversation with us on the medical questions that she put to us and the solutions that were put forward in the sense of bringing plasma into theater. She's a female officer, part of the flight crew of a Chinook helicopter. What do we need to do to gain even greater interest by women, by minorities in the Canadian forces? Maybe looking at very specific examples like that one.
So there's many things that we are doing and many things that we still need to do. Getting that message out, for one aspect, is a huge priority, is fixing the culture inside the Canadian Armed Forces, which we are working on 110%. But as we do this, the recruitment out, what I think is for Canadians, women that are out there, to be able to see themselves and say, wow, I too can do that. That's what we need to be able to do. So it's been to encouraging our leadership, like General Carrion, who's at NATO, sharing their experience, Chris Whitecross, and even some, especially our NCOs. I've served with many of them. Sometimes they're reluctant to share their stories because they don't want to talk about what they've done. They just think they're just part of the team. So there's a lot of things that I think that we can do, and we're going to be looking at on ways on trying to improve that. We're trying to put some science behind this as well.
And as you mentioned, Patricia, that includes the reserves as well, who are much closer to us as MPs in the community to use them as channels for telling stories.
We need to look at how do we even optimize the reserves even more to make them more operationally effective.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madame Gallant.
Thank you, and through you. So Saturday, there were 2 Russian Bears flying in UK airspace, and it was in Irish airspace, and Norway intruding in theirs. We had the oil market tanking with this price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. Then Monday, we have more Russian planes in Canadian airspace into U.S. airspace, tying up 4 fighter jets, 2 Canadian, 2 American. Then we have today the WHO declaring a pandemic. It's just when our attention is distracted on something else that Putin always seems to make a move. So I'm looking through the estimates, but I don't see any money in here to upgrade our NORAD, our Northern Defense, our detection capabilities. And that's what General Vance said is the greatest threat right now. So where is the money for our modernized NORAD?
So first of all, if we go back into the defense policy, is that we committed to upgrading NORAD because it's a significant project. The only reason it wasn't done because it's going to take greater study with the U.S. to be able to decide on what needs to be done. And the defense policy was about putting a plan in place where we actually have all the money that's there. And if we, what we didn't want to do is put out a plan that didn't have the money into it. That's why it was in defense policy that we're going to get it done, and now it's in my mandate letter. But having said this, now we are actually have launched on internally the plan towards how to get there. But let's not also forget, we've already made investments into the early investments to set ourselves up. We've launched 3 satellites last year that would have been up a little bit sooner, but the company wasn't able to put them up. We have 2 more satellite projects. We're putting the right research and development up in the north to do some cutting-edge research up in the north to take advantage of that. The Arctic Offshore Patrol Ship, we now decided to purchase a 6th. First one is going to be delivered to us as well. The exercises that we're also conducting up in the north, let's not forget the work that we do with CSE on the cyber side. So
the
the
work
work
about
that's
the North
but
Warning
exactly,
System, though, and
but-
you talked about satellites,
but
but
you
we
said
know
NORAD,
with the
though.
curvature of the Earth that the satellites can't beam it down to where we need it in time. So what about the infrastructure on the ground that we need to detect what's coming overhead before it actually gets here?
So the North Warning System we'll be investing into that as well, but no, but
How much?
no. But in addition to this, we also have to take a look at. What I'm trying to do is actually provide additional information that's I think is even more relevant. We have to start looking into the future. What is the technology going to be to start looking into replacing the North Warning System? And right now, some very good work is being done at this time to look at what the next technology is. And that NORAD modernization will allow us to take advantage of. And that's where we invested into the all-domain awareness system, the satellites that we've already currently invested, and even from a search and rescue perspective, we're investing into new satellite technology that will help with search and rescue.
So in addition, you will be putting infrastructure on the ground, but you mentioned earlier that you're trying to get away from the diesel fuel and diesel operations with respect to electricity generation. Would you be looking at the small modular reactor technology, which is emissions free, and having that to power your early North Warning System?
So when it comes to how we power our system, the radar, it is extremely complex work. The type of advice will come from our specialists, our experts, and especially our scientists. So these are the challenges that we have thrown out. What's important to us is we want to move towards a greener and cleaner technology, but making sure that the capability delivers for our Arctic sovereignty is extremely important. But let's not also forget the Canadians that also live up there. To our sovereignty is making sure that we support them as well. The exercises that we conduct when it comes to search and rescue, other type of response, how do we live up there, investing in their equipment is all happening as well.
And the North Early Warning System is all part of that. The Canadian, you had committed a rapid response force to the UN. Has that been stood up yet? Where are we with that? Is it still going to happen even before?
No, we have not committed that. And as I stated, when we select missions as a government, we need to do the full analysis that if we make a decision of where we're going, what we do, we got to make sure that we're going to have the right impact. And so that work is constantly ongoing with the UN.
All right, thank you. No, that's there's time for one quick question. Monsieur Robillard, you get it.
Mais oui. Monsieur.
Well, thank you. Minister, can you give us some information on the importance of the card for veterans, the Veterans Identity Card? The department transfers $1.5 billion to the department to put in place the initiative. So what is the importance of this phase, and how will it help our veterans?
Thank you. I mean, the Veterans Affairs Card is something that our veterans have asked for, and what we've done is actually improved it. I don't have a copy of what it looks like. We had, because we knew there was going to be a high demand for it, we had 3 phases of how to get those delivered. Phase 1 and 2 are complete, so everybody who retires now gets their card before they leave. And then anybody who's retired beforehand are applying. And so we have a significant amount of people that are applying, and we're working through that list to get it done. But what it also identifies is the years of service that you provide. And it's a important recognition that they can have. But the nice thing about it is it's back. It's newer and improved, and we're on the final phase of this.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Our thanks to the minister and your esteemed team. Thank you very much for coming today. It was very enlightening, and I think everybody took away some good information. A last-minute reminder, please have your witness list in for the mental health study by the close of business on Friday. And with that, we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.